had to do this. I'm sorry. Gohan's role in Dragon Ball Super has become one of the most polarizing things in the entire series so far. Some people love it, some people hate it, and both sides think that they know Gohan's character more than the other side, and it's honestly getting really annoying, so I just want to put in my 2 cents. And, what I'm thinking about everything to do with Gohan and Dragon Ball Super, and especially in episode 52, it's that I don't think they're mistreating his character, but at the same time, if episode 52 was meant to be the Gohan retires for good episode, which is a very big if at this point, because I'm not even sure if that's necessarily the case. I'm only about maybe 70% sure that's actually true. If that was what the episode was supposed to be, I don't think it was the best way of handling it. I just don't think it was at the right moment. It wasn't the right place at the right time, and there wasn't really anything to trigger it. So I'm going to try and explain what's actually making me dissatisfied. And before we start, I just want to go and kind of do some rebuttal to some big points that a lot of people seem to bring up. Okay, first of all, disregarding the fact that this is a fictional character in a fictional universe and he can be happy and satisfied with his life whenever the writers want him to be. You know what I also want from Gohan? To have screen time, to be involved in the plot. People are acting like those things are kind of mutually exclusive, and that's not necessarily true. And the other thing is, I want my fictional characters to be happy with their lives, but I also want them to actually grow and change and get character development, stuff like that. If a character is perfectly satisfied with their life and then they never change because of it, that is literally the definition of a static character, and that makes them boring. That would make the character boring. And I don't want Gohan to be a boring character. Well, yeah, that's the point. That's exactly the point. He's not a fighter at heart, and that's exactly why he fights. He fights so the world can be in peace, and so that means he never has to fight again. That is his character. And I'm not just making this stuff up. Look at this. It's the same sentence. Goku's basically okay, so you want to grow up to be a scholar, right? Well, because of that is why you should go and fight this guy. That is the point of his character. Just because he's not a fighter at heart does not mean that he will never fight when given the opportunity. Because that is misreading his character. I'll be completely honest. But the things I'm actually dissatisfied with in episode 52, it's basically just the fact that, I don't mind if you retire Gohan's character, but I think it was a really bad idea to do it now, at this specific moment. There's basically 2 reasons why I'm dissatisfied. See, the thing is, I was alright with Gohan remaining a scholar and not fighting and not trading, as long as the plot never actually called him out for it, as long as there weren't any consequences for him not fighting and not trading. And him retiring at the end of Dragon Ball Z was fine because, he was pretty powerful in his own right, so you kind of assumed that even if he wasn't going to keep training, he was still going to be strong enough to deal with anything that was ever going to threaten him if that was ever going to happen. But in Resurrection F, that wasn't the case, in the fact that Gohan not training actually made him weaker. Significantly weaker, to the point that he literally loses 2 forms. And while I know that's definitely, I thought that might have been a merchandising decision, and, because honestly, Gohan didn't need to get weaker for the plot to progress the way it did, it definitely set a precedent, and that is that if Gohan doesn't keep training, he's just going to progressively get weaker and weaker and weaker until he's not even worth bothering showing up. Kind of like what happens with the humans. Except this time, it's not that everyone just gets too strong, it's that he gets too weak. And I think that's even worse. And then when Toei did their version of Resurrection F in Dragon Ball Super, they kind of made it both better and worse. In that, they kind of used the whole idea of Gohan getting weaker as a springboard for more character development. They make Gohan say that he's dissatisfied with being weak, and also have the fact that he's having characters they make Piccolo die, and his best friend and mentor sacrifice himself because Gohan is too weak. And then also have to see Gohan go and witness all his family and friends die when the Earth is blown up. And all of that is just leading up to this idea that at the end of the Resurrection F arc, Gohan goes and asks Piccolo if he can train him again, because Gohan wants to start training again, because he realizes if something like this happens, and he can't just keep getting progressively weaker, because something might show up, and then he might be too weak to protect everyone. And I really liked this idea. Like, I thought it was a really natural evolution of his character. And it wasn't just like, oh, Gohan just listened really hard and heard the voices of the fans who wanted him to be powerful again, so he started training. No, it felt like it was a natural evolution of his character over the stuff that happened to him in Resurrection F. In fact, it was so good that it made me think that maybe the fact that Gohan was so weak in Resurrection F was actually on purpose. Like, the entire point of just making him look so weak in the movie was just to try and like shove him down so they could slowly build him back up again and make his return, if he's ever going to return, just much more satisfying, because that way he'd have something to prove. And that leads into the second big issue with the whole Gohan thing. Gohan retiring at the end of the end of Dragon Ball Z kind of makes sense, because in a sort of, this is going to get a bit meta, but like if you think about it, so Dragon Ball is a show about fighting progressively stronger opponents. So if the story of Dragon Ball is over, then that means you can kind of assume there wouldn't be any more strong opponents showing up to threaten any like peace on the earth or anything like that. Because if there was, then the story would have told us about it. So like, it makes total sense for Gohan to stop fighting at the end of Dragon Ball Z, because at the end of Dragon Ball Z, it's the end of the story. There's clearly no more threats to the Earth. The Earth is in peace for good. It makes sense for him to stop fighting because he doesn't need to fight anymore. But then Dragon Ball Super starts, and then we find out it's not the end of the story. So like, in this real kind of meta sense, as long as Dragon Ball Super keeps airing, there are inevitably going to be stronger opponents who are going to show up to threaten the peace of the Earth. And that's happened with like Beerus, and then Golden Frieza, and then I guess kind of Champa, and then like Goku Black. It's going to keep happening because that's how this series works. As long as the series keeps going, there's still going to be stronger opponents, and they're probably going to be villains and things that Goku has to fight. So even if like in-universe, Gohan thinks like maybe after Beerus leaves, or after Frieza is defeated, or after the tournament is over, even if Gohan thinks, well, okay, well it's fine now, I can settle down now because clearly peace has returned for good and I don't need to fight anymore. The fact is, we, the audience, know that's not true. Because if it was, Dragon Ball Super would have finished, and Super is not finished, and it's confirmed for at least another like 20 episodes at this point, at least another like 2 arcs. So if you combine all that stuff together, that Gohan isn't a fighter at heart, but he will stop and try to fight for the things that if things that he cares about are in danger, the fact that he was dissatisfied with getting weaker in Resurrection F, and the fact that in Dragon Ball Super the story isn't over, so there'll be more threats to show up. I mean, if you combine all that together, it kind of leads to the conclusion that Gohan is going to keep fighting, or start fighting again, or something like that, because we know in the next few arcs there's going to be something showing up, and Gohan wouldn't want to go and be like too weak to protect the things he cares about. So that's what I was thinking, and especially after Resurrection F, I was definitely thinking that's what they were going to do with Gohan's character. And then episode 52 aired, and it says that's not the case. It said that Gohan's fighting days are long gone. You shouldn't expect him to start fighting again. And he's not going to go and get involved in the main plot to do with fighting because he's not going to find out about the plot. He's just not going to ask. He's not going to know everyone's in danger. And maybe even if he did know everyone was in danger, maybe he's still not even going to fight, because he'll just be like, well, my fighting days are long gone, so even if everyone's in danger, I'm not going to go and start fighting again to try and protect them. I've seen so many people saying how nice and satisfying this was, and this doesn't end to Gohan's character, and that now he can finally settle down and enjoy the peace he always wanted. But I personally didn't find this satisfying, because it feels like he didn't earn this. Like think back to the last time we saw Gohan in a major role in like this series, and that was in Resurrection F. In the movie where he goes and he gets beaten up, he gets his ass kicked, he gets to have people sacrifice himself for him, and he has him also be dissatisfied the fact that he wasn't strong enough to help anyone. So you're saying that the last time we saw Gohan in action, he chewed himself out for being too weak, and then after that the next thing that we ever see him do is ignore that advice? Say that he's not going to keep fighting again? Saying that he's just going to be with his family the rest of the time? Even though he was punished for not training and not getting stronger by having them get into danger and have him not be able to help? There's no payoff there. Gohan was never given the chance to kind of redeem himself from all of those failures he had in Resurrection F. It just makes it seem like after everything that happened because of his fault, he just kind of gave up. Which is just really lazy, and honestly kind of gives this idea that Gohan just realized after Resurrection F, he actually just realized that he just sucks at fighting so much that he's not even going to try anymore. which is I just don't like that idea. I mean, I'm sure people are going to say that this whole idea of Gohan starting to train again at the end of Resurrection F was just a little addition by Toei and probably wasn't necessarily like in Toriyama's script or was really intentional at all. But either way, whether it was intentional or not, it was a very bad decision for Toei to add that in. Because if they didn't know where Gohan's character was going to lead towards when they were writing Resurrection F, then they shouldn't have included a subplot that they didn't know with certainty that they could actually resolve. You know, it's like the rule of Chekhov's gun. If you put something in there, you have to make sure you know that you can make a payoff for that. It's got to do something. And if Toei did know what was going to happen with Gohan's character when they were writing Resurrection F, then they shouldn't have made Gohan's character make a complete 180 from one arc to the next. Unless, of course, this subplot is actually going to lead somewhere, and episode 52 was just all a giant red herring by Toei to try and make us forget about it, which, well, it could theoretically be possible, but I don't think even Toei Animation would troll us that badly. Well, I don't necessarily care how powerful Gohan is. I just want him to show up when people are in danger, or at least attempt to show up. I don't want it to feel like he's giving up even though people might actually be in danger and they might need his power, because that just seems almost irresponsible of him. And if Toei and Toriyama really want to retire Gohan's character as a fighter for good, at least give us a cool moment to remember him by. I don't want the last memory of Gohan being a fighter having him have his ass kicked, and then the biggest moment we ever see him do is basically just having him cry for help. Like maybe one example, maybe in the final arc he can once again for the final time tap into that hidden power of his and maybe get a few good hits in on one of the main villains. It doesn't have to mean anything in the end, but I just feel like it would be a really nice way of just sort of ending off his character as a fighter for good. And finally being able to use that power again to do something that can help save the day. And it'd be a nice bookend to his character. You know, but in the very first time and the very last time he's a fighter, we see him honestly pretty weak, but then this spur of the moment decision, he randomly gets really, really powerful, surprising everyone, and he has this brief moment of power, and with that brief moment, everyone else is able to win. I just feel like that would be a really nice way of ending off his character as a fighter for good. I mean, it's just wishful thinking at this point. If I'm going to learn my lesson from Resurrection F, if they're ever going to throw Gohan a bone, I'm not going to put my hopes up anymore, but that's basically what I wanted from Gohan's character. Episode 52 didn't really give us anything. Gohan's retirement kind of came out of nowhere, and it didn't really give us anything really significant to remember him by, if this was supposed to be him retiring from fighting for good. So Too Long Didn't Read version, Gohan retiring as a character is fine, but don't make it happen in the middle of an ongoing story, and also don't make it happen when literally 20 episodes ago you were saying that Gohan was going to start fighting again, because that is just really inconsistent. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I know you guys might not necessarily agree with any of this, but I just really wanted to get this out there because, I mean, if this episode was him retiring for good, I'm still not really satisfied because of those reasons, and I hope that maybe some people might actually agree with me. And if you don't, well, it doesn't really matter. It's just a random kind of rant video. This is just me saying my ideas. I never said you had to agree with me. I mean, maybe this is a red herring episode. Maybe Gohan will end up returning one time, even just one time, just having a final hurrah, and it'll be awesome. And then if that happens, I will be truly satisfied. And the next time he actually says I'm going to stop fighting for good, I actually might think this is a good idea. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.